Suppose you rent a pit of plastic balls for a party. 2/7 of the balls are blue, 1/3 red, 1/7 green, and 5/21 yellow. If you wanted to order the colors from least to greatest, you need to know how to compare and order fractions. Recall that a fraction compares a part with a whole. The fraction 3/8 represents a part made of 3 pieces from a whole with 8 equal pieces. Use the controls to see how the numerator is the number of pieces in the part, and the denominator is the number of equal-sized pieces in the whole. A fraction wall is useful for comparing the size of different fractions. Each row is a whole divided into a different number of equal-sized pieces. The fraction 3/8 is represented by a part consisting of 3 pieces where the whole has been divided into 8 equal-sized pieces. Drag the control up and down to see that when fractions have the same numerator, the greater the denominator, the smaller the fraction. Now drag the control left and right to see that when fractions have the same denominator, the greater the numerator, the greater the fraction. These fractions all have the same numerator. Order the fractions from smallest to greatest. Drag the tiles to move them. The fraction wall helps visualize that because the fractions have the same numerators, the greater the denominator, the smaller the fraction. Here is another example. This time the fractions all have the same denominator. Order the fractions from smallest to greatest. The fraction wall helps visualize that because the fractions have the same denominators, the greater the numerator, the greater the fraction. When fractions have the same denominators, just compare numerators. But what about when both the numerators and denominators are different? You may recall that fractions can be written as equivalent fractions with a common denominator. To express the fractions as equivalent fractions with a common denominator, start by writing the multiples of the denominators. Next, identify the first multiple that is common to all the denominators. In this example, 12 is the least common denominator. Finally, express each fraction as an equivalent fraction with the common denominator of 12. Since the equivalent fractions all have the same denominator, just compare the numerators of the equivalent fractions. Drag the fractions to order them. The fraction wall confirms that 1/2 is smaller than 2/3, which is smaller than 3/4. You can also see that by rewriting the fractions as equivalent fractions with the common denominator of 12, we were able to just compare numerators. Greater than and less than signs are used when comparing numbers. Imagine the signs as a muncher that always eats the larger number. A mathematical sentence with a greater than or less than sign is called an inequality. Inequalities are read from left to right. A mixed number contains a whole number and a fraction. When comparing mixed numbers, the number with the greater whole number is larger. When mixed numbers have the same whole number, compare the fractions of the mixed numbers. Fractions can be represented on the number line. The whole is the distance from 0 to 1. Drag the dots to represent the fractions 6/12 and 3/12 on the number line. Numbers increase as you move to the right on the number line. Because 6/12 is to the right of 3/12 on the number line, 6/12 is greater than 3/12. Drag the markers to represent the fractions -3/5 and 3/5 on the number line. Which fraction is smaller? Notice all negative numbers are to the left of all positive numbers on the number line, so any negative number is less than any positive number. Drag the markers to represent the fractions -4/5 and -1/5 on the number line. Which fraction is greater? Remember that the numbers on the number line increase from left to right. Because -1/5 is to the right of -4/5, -1/5 is greater than -4/5. Now back to the problem of ordering the colored balls from least to greatest. By listing a few multiples of each denominator, notice that 21 is a common denominator for the fractions. By rewriting the fractions with 21 as a common denominator, you see that the greatest number of balls is red, then blue, then yellow, then green.